I'm also the perinatal services and lactation coordinator. Um, if you didn't know, California has a SIDS coordinator in all of the counties of the state. SIDS is a mandated program. And what that means is that we are a team of nurses who provide an immediate response to families who experience a sudden infant death associated with sleep. So we contact the families and then we can provide grief support or connect them to resources. So just in case you were unaware or you didn't know what that meant, we are a team of nurses who help support families. We receive those notifications directly from the medical examiner. And as you can imagine, it can be traumatic. So what we're trying to do, we can't always predict or we can't cure SIDS, but what we've learned is that there are risk reductions that we can all make. And one of those is through safe sleep and breastfeeding. And you are in the right place today. I know that there are childcare providers, home visitors, visiting nurses, and you are in the right place today because it's all about educating our families. So thank you again for your time, Jackie. Next slide, please. And for those of you who are unaware, I'm part of the county who has collaborated with our partners within and without of the government to really provide a comprehensive, innovative strategy to really help our communities thrive. And I'm really grateful for the team that I work with. I believe that is really our mission, and it's wonderful to collaborate with partners like COI and WIC and all of you. So thank you. Next slide, please. So our objectives for today, you're going to learn the terms sudden unexpected infant death, and then there's sudden infant death syndrome. Now in California, we separate those two. So oftentimes they're used interchangeably, but for today, the data that I'm sharing with you and the information I'm sharing with you is based on San Diego and what we follow within the state. As I already mentioned, we don't know how to solve or cure SIDS. Oh, that was too fast. Sorry. Can we go back one more time? Thank you. But we can reduce the risk. And that we have learned through research and through, by the way, this has been happening for hundreds of years. So we have learned about that there are certain individuals or certain situations that put infants at risk. Therefore, we have learned ways to reduce those risks, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we've also come to learn about protective factors, and we are going to speak about 3 of those today, one of which is about breastfeeding. Thank you. The next slide, please. So sudden unexpected infant death is the death of an infant between 1 month and a year that dies unexpectedly and suddenly. It's usually, a baby that's normally otherwise healthy, and it is usually associated with sleep. But after a full investigation that includes the death scene wherever the death occurred, and whoever saw the infant living last, they will do a reenactment, they do an investigation, a full, complete autopsy. And after all of that, it may be determined that the death was caused by suffocation, where the baby's airway was blocked, so they couldn't breathe. There was entrapment, such as being stuck between 2 objects like a mattress and the wall. There may be an infection, an underlying something that they didn't know or they discover. Maybe it's a virus or a bacterial infection. It could be metabolic, something that actually affects baby's breathing mechanism, or maybe there's something again that they determine after this full autopsy and full investigation. Or it could be a cardiac defect or another something underlying that they didn't know after birth. Or it could be trauma, accidental or non-accidental. And that could be shaken baby syndrome, or maybe if the baby falls, or if there's some other type of trauma, a motor vehicle crash type thing. And then there's sudden infant death syndrome. Can you go to the next slide, please? So sudden infant death syndrome then is in the absence of any other clear, absolute diagnosis. It is a type of SUID. So again, it falls under that umbrella of sudden unexpected infant death. It is a sudden and silent medical disorder. It's associated when the time when the baby is asleep. And it is one of the leading causes of death among babies between a month and the first year of age, with the vast majority of those deaths occurring between 1 and 4 months of age. And I'm going to explain a little bit why that may be so. But the bulk of the SIDS cases definitely occur before 6 months of age, but they can happen between that first year of life. Next slide, please. So we know that it can happen to any family, that it doesn't discriminate. It affects all social, economic, and ethnic groups. However, we have seen that it happens around 2.5 times more frequently in African American infants than in white infants. And this is a topic that deserves its whole other conversation. But I just want to address that this is absolutely a result of health disparities. And I will touch on that a little bit more, but I have colleagues who are trying to address these health disparities, but it really is disturbing when you see the data. Next slide, please. So here's some data. Due to the small number of deaths, they have it grouped in years of 3. So these are SUID and SIDS rates in San Diego from 1990 to 2023. And you'll see that in the early 90s, we had approximately 119 SUID deaths out of 100,000 births in San Diego. And that number was almost reduced to half between 1992 to 1997. And that was a very simple intervention of putting babies to sleep on their backs. So since then, we've continued to trend downwards, and you can see that it's trended down and it's sort of trended back up. So it's never completely gone, but the biggest impact to our data, or to the numbers so far, has been that simple intervention of putting a baby to sleep on their back for every sleep. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is a slide showing how San Diego compares to California and to the US, with San Diego being the green dotted line. So you can see that we're pretty comparable to California, but you can see how it looks that we are doing, and we probably are for sure doing better, but it looks like there's a wide gap in the national rates and San Diego and California. And some of that can be due to classification. I just want to share that there still may be more infant deaths occurring, but not all counties are like the counties in California. I just want to share that there are higher death rates, but it may be due to some of the classifying in comparison to the US. But you can see, though, that San Diego and California are pretty close. And that San Diego had a 29% decrease in deaths from 2000 to 2002 to 2021 to 2023. Thank you. You can go to the next slide, please. And then this is a slide just showing, going back to demonstrating how African Americans and actually our Native American infants are dying in greater numbers due to SIDS than those of other races. So the SIDS is in orange on this graph, and you can see that, yes, that the Native American and African American rates were nearly 3 times higher than the white rate. And, you know, going back to that one slide that I mentioned about the health disparities, that it's regardless of the family, of the mother's economic and education, that African American women are still 3 to 4 times more likely to deliver preterm. And I'm going to show you also in slides that that is a risk factor for SIDS. And so regardless of their education and economic status. So, and then the same thing for Native Americans. I mean, I think this slide really speaks to the disenfranchised populations and the health disparities that they have experienced. Thank you. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next one too. So now we're going to talk about what we think is happening when a SIDS death occurs. So this is the triple risk model theory. And researchers believe that when you have a vulnerable infant, and that can be an infant that has a developmental defect that perhaps we haven't yet discovered, we don't know yet, or maybe they were born preterm, or maybe they have some other risk factor, an issue with their brainstem, or some other factor that is not allowing them to arouse better. Combined in the critical developmental period that all infants go through, the first 6 months of life, there's rapid brain development happening. The infant is learning to develop or to live outside of the womb. And also, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, that, you know, with nearly 90% of the SIDS deaths occurring during that critical developmental period. But therefore, it's the outside stressors. And this is the one and only area that we have control over. But researchers believe that it's when these three combine that either a SIDS case is likely to occur. But this is also where we have the power to improve the outside stressor. And please, I can pause if there are any questions or if I'm unclear or if there's anything in the chat. Basically, what researchers are saying is that that is the one area that we can control when we're caring for an infant. So the sleep surface, the sleep environment, is there smoke in the environment? Is the mattress firm? Are there no blankets, no pillows, no toys in the sleep environment? Are they fed human milk? These are all the outside stressors that we can educate families on and that we can control. So this is the triple risk model. So next slide, please. So through that, now we understand that there are infants who are at greater risk for SIDS. We know that it is for those young mothers who are late or have no prenatal care. It does happen with greater frequency in the male gender. And also we do have lots of cases that are from multiples. And I've already spoken to African American and Native American, but we do understand that link because a premature or very low birth weight infant is also at greater risk. And if African American women are 3 to 4 times more likely to deliver preterm, you can see that there's a direct link as to why they may be at higher risk as well. Next slide, please. And then we also know that it's infants who are exposed to cigarettes at any point in pregnancy or in their postpartum environment. Also, any prenatal illicit drug or alcohol use by the parent. Prone sleeping, especially, so stomach sleeping, especially on soft bedding, is not is not safe at all. And then we know with overheating. So no, we do not recommend putting babies to sleep with hats and with too many blankets. And we're going to show you what a good sleep environment looks like. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, and I have cared for several families, infants die in childcare, with about 25% of those deaths occurring. And what's really tragic is that a lot of them occur during that first week, sometimes even the first or second day. I had a family, it was their second day at daycare. And a large reason why they believe this is so is because the baby is being put in a different sleep position. It could be also maybe it was going to happen even with the parent. Like, again, remember with SIDS, we can't predict, we don't know which infants will succumb to SIDS, but we do know that there is a link to how the sleep position may change, or maybe it's a warmer environment, or maybe they get swaddled, or maybe there's some other factor in there. So that's why the messaging for families and for anyone who cares for babies, that it's the same sleep, that it's in an empty bassinet or crib with on a firm mattress. And again, we're going to show you what that looks like, but for every sleep. So at mom's, at daycare, at grandma's, it's the same messaging. So that's really what we, as public health nurses, try to educate our families on. Next slide, please. So there's good news. I know I'm doom and gloom, and I'm sorry, but we have learned that there are protective factors and there are ways to reduce the risk of SIDS. Next slide, please. So according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, these are the recommendations for reducing the risk of SIDS and other sleep-related deaths. Again, always placing baby on their back for all sleeps. Now, when they get older and they start rolling around and they can roll themselves back and whatnot, you don't need to keep waking them up and putting them back on their back. But it's when you're placing them down, you place them on their back on a firm, flat sleep surface with single sheet. And we're going to see what that looks like. Breastfeeding is highly recommended, and any amount of breast milk is protective, by the way. But we will talk a little bit more about how it's protective and how the protection increases with duration and exclusivity. Room sharing and not bed sharing. No soft objects, no toys, no pillows, bumpers, or loose bedding anywhere in the baby's sleep area. No blankets, no loose blankets in the sleep area. And again, we already talked about no smoking anywhere in their environment. There is a benefit for giving babies a pacifier, but of course, as a lactation consultant, we would say have them have a good established at the breast first. Don't let baby get too warm. We talked about that too. Lots of tummy time when they're awake. Follow healthcare providers' guidance on vaccines and checkups, and absolutely 100% do not buy any product that goes against safe sleep recommendations or that tells you that it will protect your child from SIDS. Next slide, please. And again, talking about the protective factors, we know that underlying bacterial infections and viruses can be the cause of death. So immunizations are actually protective, and that's also why the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that babies continue to have their well baby visits. So we know that immunizations are protective. I mentioned about breastfeeding. It's recommended because uh, the American Academy of Pediatrics actually recommends 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding. Um, However, we've learned that any amount is helpful, but studies have shown that the protection increases with the lot with the with exclusivity and also with their the longer that they breastfeed. They're protected, but again, any amount is protective. Um, and and then the pacifiers, they can be helpful. It can just keep infants from getting, too deep into. It can help them, be aroused a little bit better. And if the pacifier falls out, again, you don't wake up the infant and to give it back, but it's just for putting them to sleep that it's found to be a protective factor. Next slide, please. So a lot of people ask, why is it that um, that breastfeeding, human milk feeding, expressed milk either from mom's breast or expressed in a bottle, however the baby is being fed, that it's highly digestible because it contains just the precise mix of water and nutrients, carbohydrates, fats. We're going to hear more, I'm sure, from Kim about the benefits of it, but it helps to establish the infant's immune system, and not only that, but it's alive. It has living cells in it that actually contribute to the baby's immunity, and whatever the family is exposed to or mom is exposed to, the baby receives a benefit from that. So the benefits actually extend beyond the family. So the benefits to the daycare, the benefits to the work environment. So it is, there's a lot of reasons why we should support it. But the reason why it's also protective against SIDS, we believe, in addition to all those things that I said, it's highly digestible. And so breastfed babies have to wake up. They get hungrier, maybe a little more vigorous, and that may be one of the protective factors why breastfeeding helps babies, is that it's highly digestible and they need to feed more frequently. Therefore, they are easier to arouse from a deep sleep. Next slide. And then we also know that there are risks of not breastfeeding. Um, and according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, that an infant who is not breastfed or who doesn't receive any breast milk may be at a greater risk for SIDS. We know as lactation consultants and nurses and as moms and friends in the community that there are certain situations where moms can't breastfeed, or maybe it's a surrogacy or an adoption. We understand that. It's if it's possible. If it's possible, we want to support that family. And that, again, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, breastfeeding is a public health issue. It's not a lifestyle choice, because those benefits go beyond the infancy. It's for the baby is getting set up for life, and it's a win for the lactating parent as well, because there's a protection against cancers, cardiovascular disease. So it really is a benefit for the community, and that, breastfeeding promotion is a risk reduction strategy. So in public health and healthcare, supporting that family, we are reducing the risk of SIDS. So Yes. Next slide, please. And I touched on this a little bit, but we know that that not everybody has the same access to lactation support. Um, we know that there's certain populations we already mentioned that African American women were 3 to 4 times more likely to have a birth or postpartum complication. Um, Moms have to return to work earlier, perhaps. And this is where you come in, that we want to help educate childcare environments to support breastfeeding families. And also, we are doing better about supporting our workplace environments. Um, but we just want to recognize that these barriers do affect certain families, and we're trying to identify that and try to improve um, our outcomes. But I want to pause for a minute because I have a feeling, I think I saw a question come through, Jackie, and I don't know if you want to pause me there.
I am looking at the chat right now. And it says breast milk from the bottle versus from the breast. It doesn't
Right.
matter, correct?
Correct. Correct. Yes. That, yeah, when we say breastfeeding or breast milk, yeah, that also expressed milk um, in a bottle, in a cup, it all counts. It's all the same. If the mom is expressing their milk, just like what they would do when returning to work. So yes, great question. Thank you, Jackie. You can go to the next slide, please. So a lot of people put their babies to sleep on their side and they think that that is just as safe as putting them on their back, but it actually isn't. So it may be safer than putting them to sleep on their stomach. It still carries a risk. So back to sleep for every sleep. Again, when the baby starts moving around and they can move themselves in and out around, it's different. But when you're putting them down, um, we want we want to educate that we put babies to sleep on their backs for every sleep. Next slide, please. And I know there's a lot of questions that people ask, and I know that this is also what I used to believe, why we thought it was safer to place babies on their stomach to sleep. But if you look at the baby with the green check on their back, there's a protective factor there. So the trachea, that is the airway, sits on top of the esophagus, which is the tube that goes to the stomach. And if a baby were to spit up, the contents would have to go over gravity, against gravity, to get into their airway. And actually, what might happen is the secretions will pool in the back of their throat, and they say that they're actually better able to clear those secretions on their own when they're on their back. And when the baby's on their stomach, sleeping on their stomach, the airway to the lungs is below. Um, and so whatever contents come from the stomach will go directly down near the airway. And that's why babies are able to aspirate. You can also see that this particular baby looks like they're having trouble breathing on a soft bedding as well. But that's the protective factor that they believe um, that it's the baby's physiology that's actually protective for them when they sleep on their back. And that is the mechanism for you in that slide. Next slide, please. So we've been talking about a safe sleep environment, and I told you that we would see one. And this is a perfect example of a nice empty crib with a firm mattress, just a simple one sheet over it. The baby is in a sleeper that's covered, a footed little pajama, so there's no blanket. Um, we want to go by whatever the adult is feeling and then add one more layer on the baby. So whatever, however warm it is for the parent, just add one more layer for the baby. Um, it's in a non-smoking environment. Now, for this particular family, they are room sharing. Obviously, that wouldn't be in the childcare setting, but the sleep environment, just the empty um, baby on their back, no pillows, no blankets, no toys. That is a safe sleep environment. Uh, thank you. Next slide, please. So a lot of people worry that, babies won't develop their trunk muscles if they're always laying on their back. But actually, that's why tummy time is so important. And I'm sure that a lot of you who work with infants are aware of that. So lots of tummy time when they're awake. And obviously, yeah, back to sleep uh, for sleep. And then supervised tummy time, we know, will also help support those misshapen flat spots that sometimes occur on infants' head. And I've also heard of rotating the direction or the mattress, putting them to sleep on the other end can also help prevent some of those flat spots. Um, Next slide, please. So I mentioned don't buy anything that tells you that it's going to prevent SIDS or anything like that. We encourage you, and we do not recommend any products, but we encourage folks to look up safer products themselves. And on the next slide, Jackie, you can also look if there have been any recalls or any injuries associated with any of those products. So we do recommend that, but there are no, we get asked that all the time. Do we give out any cribs, or is there anyone that we recommend? And, we can't, we don't. But we strongly encourage folks to, again, avoid those products that say that they will prevent SIDS. I've heard of people now putting monitors on babies or the cameras on babies. Um, I really can't speak to any of that, but people can look up some of these products on these websites. And I think, Jackie, the next slide, please. I think that there's more information there for you. Um, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you, your time and attention. And I'm happy to answer if there are any other questions in the chat.
I don't see any in the chat, but if anybody wants to come off mute or anything and just ask a question, that's fine. Or we can turn it over to Kim. And I will be sending out these slides to everyone who registered, so you'll be able to click on these hyperlinks in the slides.
Thank you.
Take it
Thank
away,
you.
Kim.
Okay, thank you so much, Jamie Boy. Not an easy presentation to learn about, but it's really helpful to know what we do have control over. So I always appreciate it, and I never tire of listening to your presentation. It's really valuable information. All right, you guys. Well, nice to be here with Jamie. I'm Kim Speckhahn. I'm from Childcare WIC, and I am a IBCLC, a lactation consultant, and in my agency up here in North County, I'm the breastfeeding coordinator for our agency. And then for our county, I'm one of 3 regional breastfeeding liaisons that WIC has. So we're kind of the community outreach arm. And we work to fill in the gaps of breastfeeding support. So we work with healthcare providers, we work with workplaces, we work with schools, and guess what? We work with childcare providers like you all. So I've been actually doing this training, and we developed it about 10 years ago on a grant with the Center for Community Health. And so there are many resources that I can share with you at the end. So I just invite you just to kind of kick back and relax and just soak in this information. And there will be resources that you can follow up with if you want more information. And I invite you also to please come off of mute if you would like. Please use the chat box. I want this to be your time. We do have a lot of information to cover, but I want to give us an opportunity to ask questions so that, hopefully more of it will stick for you. So the whole goal of this training is to help you start thinking about why you might want to be a breastfeeding-friendly childcare provider if that's the domain you work in. Or if you don't, you'll know that there are breastfeeding-friendly childcare providers out there. They can be center-based, they can be home-based. So for all of our audience, whether you're a public health nurse, a home visitor, or you're working with children directly or taking care of infants in childcare, I know you'll be able to leave with something from this training. And so also we're going to take a look at what does it look like to support families in childcare who want to provide their expressed breast milk, or who would like to come and breastfeed on site at the childcare center or home. And then most importantly, where to find resources to support breastfeeding families that are in your realm of care. So this training usually takes around 90 minutes. We're just going to kind of go at a pace that is comfortable for us. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my next slide here. So Jamie mentioned that one way to reduce the risk of sudden infant death syndrome, which typically happens during sleep, is to breastfeed. And she mentioned that exclusivity and duration matter. And so I want to talk a little bit with you and ask you, what have you heard about exclusive breastfeeding? What does this mean to you? Does anybody have an idea about what exclusivity means? Feel free to come off mute. Don't be bashful. Okay, I'll tell you. So exclusive breastfeeding is, yes, thank you, Jessica. It's meaning providing only breast milk. And so believe it or not, human babies, that's all they need in the first 6 months is just breast milk because it has the right balance of water and calories and nutrition among many, many other things. So the recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics is to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months. And then what happens around 6 months? Most babies are developmentally showing you signs that they're ready. They're curious about trying other foods. So we introduce complementary foods around 6 months. Doesn't have to be on the date. We want to look for signs of readiness. And then the AAP recommends to continue to breastfeed while you're offering other foods for at least 2 years or more, however long mother and baby want to. So is that the norm in our country? Thumbs up or thumbs down? No, it's not, but globally it is. And that's because that's the way our mammalian species is designed to grow and to develop, is to just exclusively breastfeed for that first 6 months and then continue for 2 or more years. So breast milk has it all. We don't have to, if you're living in the Sahara, you don't have to offer extra water. That mother's body creates the perfect balance to keep the baby hydrated and to keep the baby nourished. So that means that we don't have to offer anything or recommend to families, or if they ask us, say, oh yeah, you need to offer something else. You don't. If you're breastfeeding, everything's in the milk. So anybody surprised about those recommendations for breastfeeding? I see something. I love it when I can see on camera. Thanks, Jessica, for the head nods. So having said that, the reality we know is that we wish that more families would exclusively breastfeed, but the reality is for a lot of different reasons is that doesn't happen. So does that mean that it's not worth it to do any breastfeeding? And the answer is absolutely not. Any amount of human milk for that human baby is going to be extremely beneficial. So working with your families, whether they're exclusively breastfeeding or they're combo feeding or they're exclusively pumping or they're doing just a little bit of human milk or they're formula feeding, we're going to meet them where they're at when we're taking care of our little ones. Okay. So just another side that the longer a mother and a baby breastfeed, the greater the protections of and the risks against many chronic health diseases. So exclusivity and duration make a huge difference. So what have you heard about why breastfeeding is important for babies? What's in it for the baby? And feel free to get your fingers going in the chat or to come off mute. I love to hear what you already know. Oh, thank you. Yes, some antibodies to keep the baby healthy, connection. Absolutely. So, breastfeeding is food, but it's also a relationship. So it encompasses much more than just nutrition. All of the things that are in human milk nourish the baby, of course. Then they also protect the baby because of all of the antibodies that are in the breast milk. But here are some of the conditions that you might know of, and some may be new for you that I'd like to share with you. Oh, and thank you so much. I'm looking in the chat. Nutrients, essential fatty acids, connection, safety. Yes, all of those things. So breastfeeding, especially exclusivity, and if it's for the 2 years or beyond, truly help prevent childhood obesity. It reduces the chance of infants getting sick with things like diarrhea and ear infections. Breast milk and breastfeeding can protect against the baby developing allergies, diabetes, and as we know, reduces the risk of SIDS. It also can reduce the risk of childhood cancers, especially childhood leukemias. And it might be interesting to know that a newborn baby does have an immune system that is still developing and is not fully functional. So the reason that we see all of these decreased risks of chronic health conditions is because the mother's milk is providing the baby immunity. It's passive immunity for that first 6 months until the baby's immune system is kicking into higher gear and can produce those antibodies itself. And human milk is also signaling. So it signals the development of every organ system in the baby. So that includes the nervous system, brain growth and development, obviously, the immune system, the respiratory system, the musculoskeletal system, every system in the baby. So we could say that breast milk, human milk, satisfies both the physical, and because we know of the connection, we can also say it satisfies not only the physical tummy, but the emotional tummy. This is a handout that we share in WIC. It's beautifully simple, and it just illustrates in a very simple level the differences between human milk and formula. Now, formula is not bad. I'm a lactation consultant. I'm all about breastfeeding, right? And we need formula. We need safe, well-developed formulas. And the reality is that formula will never be able to replicate breast milk. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Breast milk is a body fluid that is dynamic. It changes from minute to minute, from hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, and it changes throughout the 24-hour cycle where the baby's breastfeeding. And also, it has different flavors, right? Depending upon the mother's diet, that breast milk is going to taste different based on what the parent has eaten, whereas formula is going to have the same taste over and over again. There are no live bioactive components in formula. There are basic nutritional ingredients that we need: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals. And then there are a few synthetic substitutes that can be added to formula. This is all really good. And at the same time, it's never going to match what's in breast milk. Jamie mentioned that maybe one of the protective factors from breastfeeding is that breast milk is digested so quickly. And so babies are arousing more often to feed because that's what they need to do. They feed, they grow, they feed, they grow. Oh, they poop and they sleep too. But that is their main job especially in the first 3 years, is just to grow, grow, grow. And they're growing their fastest in those first 6 weeks and first 6 months. So breast milk, as you can see from this diagram, it has a lot of things: antibodies, Hamlet cells, which are the anti-cancer cells, growth factors, enzymes, disease-fighting stem cells, hormones, antiviruses, anti-allergies, anti-parasites, probiotics, prebiotics, and so on. And honestly, we really don't even know what all is in human milk. Luckily, we have a budding field called lactology that is forming here in San Diego at UCSD. And there's a lot of research that's going on to try to figure out what is this amazing substance and what are all of the components. Another perk is that technically breastfeeding, at least breast milk, is free. You don't have to go to a store and buy it, whereas formula does have that cost. And there's very low carbon footprint from breastfeeding, whereas the production, distribution of manufacturing of formula leaves quite a large carbon output. So again, this isn't to be negative on formula, it's just to have a realistic picture of what's going on. So I'm glad you like that slide, Jimmy. I do too. It's always a good one. So basically, in the world of breastfeeding, I mean, and in the world of research, we're all in agreement that breast milk it's liquid gold. And if you look at the price of gold these days, which is only going up, human milk is only going to be increasing in value because it's can't be replaced by a synthetic formula. So we also know that, like I mentioned before, that human milk is what human babies are expecting to get to thrive and to grow and to develop. So have you guys heard of this term liquid gold before? Yeah, probably have. Oh, and I just see a question here. Allison wrote, for families who did not have the child biologically, meaning the baby is here from adoption or surrogacy, what is the availability and cost of human milk at milk banks in San Diego County? What a great question. It's not as readily available as we like. You can purchase it. It is expensive. I think the last time I looked at the UC Health Milk Bank, it was about $4 an ounce. A typical breastfed baby consumes around 25 ounces of breast milk daily. So you can do the math. It's quite cost prohibitive. But hopefully in the future, that will be something that we have more availability of donor milk for families who adopted or who had a surrogacy child. Great question. So I have a question for you because in childcare, knowing that human milk has all of these immune system protections, what do you think is let's take a baby or an infant who's in childcare, who's exposed to all of the germs of everybody. What do you know about how that exposure is going to protect the baby in relationship to his breastfeeding relationship with his mom? So let me just tell you something a little bit. We talked about the value of human milk, whether it's coming directly from the mother's breast or if it's pumped and it's coming from the bottle. But what happens is after that baby who was exposed to everything at childcare comes home, or the mother comes to the childcare center, and before they get in the car and go home, baby comes to the breast. The baby is communicating through the mother's nipple pores what their immune system has come into contact that day at childcare. And all of that signaling that goes back through the nipple pores and into the mother's mammary glands and to her immune system immediately recreates or creates antibodies that go right back out and back to the baby. So this is why you might find that breastfed babies tend to get sick less often. So it's a two-way communication street when the baby is directly breastfed. So kind of interesting. I always like to share that. Any questions that you guys have so far talking about the properties of human milk and why we think it's liquid gold? Okay. So let's think about what's in it for mom. What's so great about breastfeeding for mothers? What have you heard? Oxytocin, yes, the hormonal response. That's going to be the love hormone, the relaxation hormone, the hormone that helps the milk to flow. So It's not just good for the baby, right? This is a two-way relationship. And mothers' bodies, the childbearing year finishes off with lactation. And there's a lot that happens to the mother's body as a result of producing milk and lactating, whether she's breastfeeding directly or she's pumping. So this physical contact not only helps mother and baby bond, and a lot of that is because there's a hormonal release of oxytocin. It's very relaxing, but it's important that you know, because you can encourage mothers in your domain, that breastfeeding, again, exclusivity and duration matter. So the more the mother breastfeeds, and this is cumulative with multiple children, it all adds up. The more she breastfeeds, the lower her risk of developing breast and ovarian cancers, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, we say, and also postpartum depression if the breastfeeding is going well. If the breastfeeding isn't going well, we know that it can tip a mother over the scales in mental health and make it really challenging for mental health. So yeah, I'm seeing that mirrored in the chat, the lower risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So some moms will say, "Oh, it helps me lose weight faster." That was me with the second baby, but not the first one. Didn't get that effect. But it does change the metabolic profile of the breastfeeding mother just from the act of producing milk. It takes about 500 extra calories, or that's how much her body is burning to create a full milk supply. So naturally, usually, those pregnancy pounds that were gained sort of just very slowly and steadily fall off during that breastfeeding relationship. All right, so we've talked about what's in it for baby, what's in it for mom. Now my question that I'm going to pose is, so what's in it for you? You're here for a reason. You must be curious to find out what are the advantages of being a breastfeeding-friendly childcare provider? And yep, Jamie said convenience too. So moms and babies' breastfeeding relationship is largely dependent on many factors outside of their control. When they have to go back to work, the breastfeeding knowledge of their healthcare provider, the messages that they're constantly getting from their family members, their mothers-in-law, that either are going to increase their confidence or decrease their confidence. And childcare providers are crucial to that support system. So we usually say, oh yeah, mom makes the choice to breastfeed, but truly it's the culture that breastfeeds, and we are part of that culture. Another thing that might be good to know for those of you who are more center-based childcare providers is that if you participate in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, short CACFP, then you can be reimbursed for a breastfeeding baby. If that mother breastfeeds directly, she comes to the site before she leaves, drops the baby off, and when she comes back at the end of the day before she gets in her car, that's a reimbursable feed. And of course, anytime you offer her pumped milk, that is a reimbursable fee. So it's not cost prohibitive to support breastfeeding in your child care center. You can get reimbursement if you're in the CACFP program. And there's nothing to purchase. You don't have to expend any money on that cost because the mother's bringing that milk to you. And at the end of the presentation, I will open up that link to CACFP. It's got really wonderful resources for childcare providers. And, we know most moms want to breastfeed, and we also know that most moms or parents have to go back to work. So they are going to be looking for someone or a childcare center who knows how to support their breastfeeding journey, who's going to give them accurate information, who they can trust to store and handle their milk properly and to feed their baby, and who is really going to be clued into what the behavior patterns of a breastfed baby look like. Another perk is that you are going to have a healthier child in your care if they're breastfed. And we know what that's like. If one child gets sick, it just goes around. And then when children are out, lots of repercussions. They're not in your care. Parent has to take work off, go to the doctor. It's really costly for everybody to have a sick baby or a sick child. And word spreads. So that family that found you because you're breastfeeding friendly will tell their friends. So you'll have a steady flow of clientele. Anything else you guys can think of? Allison, thank you. You wrote supporting the health, physical, mental, social of children and families. Yes. I mean, I look at you guys as guardian angels. You are just totally protecting this entire family by being able to support them with their breastfeeding journey. All right. So now let's look at what I call the 5 building blocks of becoming breastfeeding friendly. And this is not something I invented. Again, there's a training program called Breastfeeding Friendly San Diego. And this grant was, worked on this a little less than 10 years ago. And there are videos, there are training materials, everything for you that I'll share at the end. So I'm going to share with you what these 5 building blocks are to become breastfeeding friendly. And remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing when we're talking about breastfeeding. It can be any amount of milk. But the 5 building blocks that we're going to cover are creating a comfortable place for breastfeeding or pumping within your environment, home or center, creating a written policy or procedure that communicates to your families and your staff how you support breastfeeding. You're going to learn how to properly receive and store and handle and feed human milk to the babies in your care. And really important is to know, what are my resources? What can I share with families? And who can I refer them to if they need breastfeeding help? And then the last building block is to provide training to the childcare employees, the staff that are caring for the baby. So in effect, the training that you're participating in right now is doing that. So let's look at the first building block, which is creating a breastfeeding friendly environment, either in your home or in your workplace or in your childcare center. These pictures are great. Pictures speak 1,000 words. So I want you to, let's look at the first one on the left and just kind of notice what is in there that's going to be helpful, that you can start thinking of, how can I create a space in my home or in my facility where a parent could come and either sit down and breastfeed their baby or pump their milk. So if we look at this first person, she's sitting in a rocking chair. She's got a comfortable seat, right? She's got a footstool. She's got a little table off to the left-hand side. I see a pump. That's one of our WIC Lactina pumps, that blue industrial looking thing. And it looks like it might be kind of off in a corner, maybe kind of private. And I see a baby breastfeeding, and they look pretty happy to me. So the key thing is that this doesn't have to be a fancy room. We're thinking and looking for a space that you can create wherever you are for those breastfeeding parents. And we want it to be welcoming. We want it to be inviting and kind of a little bit of a refuge, right? Because they're coming to you on their way to work or to school. Life is hectic. So let's think about, how could we make this just a really nice place, just a pit stop, so that they can feed their baby or they can pump, especially if it's your own employee. So here's what you need. You just need a private, comfortable space, but it doesn't have to be its own room. It can have a partition. It can be a storage closet that has all of these components that we need. It needs to have a comfortable chair. You need to have a side table where you could either place a pump or a glass of water. If we look at the picture on the right, we see there's a comfortable couch. We see there's a side table. There's a glass of water. We know those of us who have breastfed, usually you sit down to feed, and what happens? You get thirsty. So having that water there. If the mom is pumping, she's going to need an electrical outlet so that she can pump her milk. And if this is for your own employees at your childcare site, of course, you're going to need a place to store that milk, a refrigerator, and a sink with running water. Guess what? A bathroom doesn't cut it with California laws. And why would we expect to feed our babies in a bathroom when we normally wouldn't go there to consume a meal ourselves? So What else could you guys suggest that might be nice? Or if you already have a space, what would you like to share with the rest of us that's been nice for your breastfeeding parents? Or if you are breastfeeding or pumping parent yourself, what would you like to have in this private space or this quiet space? Feel free to add anything. And if I see something pop up, I'll come back and make note of that. So maybe using that reaction, the reaction heart at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you could give me a thumbs up if you already have a lactation space in your work site, either for employees who are breastfeeding or pumping, or for families that you're serving. Oh, great. Oh, I'm seeing Hannah and Trista. There's another one I can't see. Linda, Carla, awesome. So that's fantastic. So you can think about other things that you could add to that. Pretty artwork, right? Plants, anything that's just relaxing and cozy. Okay, awesome. Oh, phone charger. I love that. Yeah, phone charger. So you can have your phone. Pumping moms might need to, if they're at work, they might need to have something to remind them of their babies to help them let down to that pump, because breastfeeding and having a milk let down to a baby is much different than having a milk let down using a breast pump. So I love that. Sound machine for sound privacy, comfortable seating. Yeah, so you can be really, really creative. And I can tell you that the moms will appreciate anything that you do. Absolutely anything. Okay, the second building block. Oh, nice smells, mint or eucalyptus. Yeah, lavender's good too. Geranium, lots of good smells. So let's move on to the second building block. And this is going to be creating a written policy or procedure. Now, this does not need to be a formal legal document. This can be a one-pager that just says, we welcome breastfeeding. We know how to care for the breastfed baby, and we know how to handle and store and feed your breast milk to your baby. So it doesn't have to be anything major. It can be a page on your website. So whatever materials you might have as a home provider or a daycare provider, you could add it to your binder of what you give to parents. You could just have it just posted right on right where when you welcome families into your center or to your home. We welcome breastfed babies and moms. Doesn't have to be very complicated at all. And again, the resources at the end of the training are going to give you samples for templates for having an infant feeding policy and procedures. Thumbs up again if you already have that, or if you know that your facility does already have an infant feeding policy that promotes breastfeeding. Awesome. Yeah, we know the county's really good with that. Thanks, Jamie. Oh, lots of thumbs up. Love it. Okay, so let's go to the third building block, which is going to be knowing how to handle the milk that comes to you, how to properly store it, and how to prepare it when it's time for the baby to breastfeed. So we're going to watch a video that was created back for this grant project about probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it's going to go over everything you need to know about how to handle, store, and prepare breast milk. And then don't worry, after it, we're just going to do a quick review to unpack that so that this sticks more into your brain. Okay, I'm going to start this. You guys let me know if the sound isn't working, but I think it should be. You good?
Properly handling breast milk is a key skill in becoming a breastfeeding-friendly childcare site. In this video, we will explore how to properly handle, store, and prepare breast milk. Breast milk is not considered a hazardous body fluid. It is food. For the purposes of this training, we will refer to the USDA Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP guidelines for handling, storing, and preparing breast milk. You may also want to refer to any additional health and safety regulations provided by your state or affiliated organization.
Expressed breast milk does look a little bit different than the way we would imagine milk out of the jug in the refrigerator. It's a live substance and it's made of fats, carbohydrates, protein. So you will see some separation and see that fat rise to the top, and it can look a little watery on the bottom, a little clear, which can be disarming to some people, but that's normal breast milk.
Storing breast milk is key to ensure that the milk is safe for the infant to consume. Ask mothers to store their breast milk in the refrigerator or freezer right after they pump. Mothers should be instructed to write the name of their baby and the date and time the breast milk was expressed on the bag or bottle. Encourage mothers to store their milk in BPA-free bags or bottles specific for breast milk. Bottles or bags should only be filled with 1 to 4 ounces of breast milk, depending on what their baby usually drinks at one feeding. If mothers have extra milk, it is helpful to ask them to freeze some of their milk in 1 to 2 ounce quantities for days when their baby might need more. Bottles of expressed breast milk should be refrigerated immediately upon arrival at your childcare site. They must continue to be stored in a refrigerator kept at 39 degrees Fahrenheit, 3.9 degrees Celsius, or below. It is important to ensure that all bottles or bags are labeled with the date it was expressed. CAC-FP guidelines state freshly expressed breast milk may be refrigerated for up to 72 hours. If the milk has been in your refrigerator for more than 72 hours, you may not feed it to baby, but can ask the mother if she would like to have it returned. It is helpful to use containers with the baby's name on it to organize the milk in the fridge. Always place the newest milk in the back, so you can make sure to use the oldest milk first. This way, you will decrease the chances of wasting any liquid gold.
When breast milk is brought, we ask the parents to put their child's name on it, the date that it was pumped, and then all the milk is put into an assigned tray that's labeled with the child's name as well, so that we make sure that there's no mistaking who it belongs to when it's been expressed.
I have a plastic container in the refrigerator where I put the newest milk in the back.
If there's any frozen milk that's brought in, the same process applies. It's dated, it has the name on it, and then it's kept in the freezer area.
Frozen milk should be placed in the freezer immediately upon arrival to the childcare site. The freezer temperature should be kept at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below and may be stored for up to 3 months. Breast milk and infant foods should never be microwaved, as this can create hot spots that may burn baby's mouth. Crock pots are also not recommended since they are used to cook food. There are different ways to warm up breast milk. You can heat refrigerated breast milk in its container under warm running water. Submerge it in a bowl of warm water for about 5 minutes, or in a commercial bottle warmer.
I put the milk in the bottle, and then I put the bottle in the bottle warmer, and then I just wait a couple of seconds, and then I take it out, put the lid on it, and then I feed the baby.
Gently swirl periodically to distribute the heat, but never shake, since this can cause a breakdown in some of the live cells in breast milk. Unfinished bottles or food should not be reheated later. The key in defrosting frozen breast milk is to thaw gradually to preserve properties of breast milk. Never defrost breast milk in the microwave. If mother provides frozen milk in small quantities, such as 1 to 2 ounce bags, it is much easier to defrost quickly. Thawed breast milk must be used within 24 hours or discarded.
Hay muchas ventajas de poder pompearse, en este caso las mamás, y de poder guardar y almacenar la leche materna siguiendo las guías de almacenamiento de leche materna de los programas de nutrición.
I have grown as a child care provider, just learning what's out there that us providers can help the mothers, the babies, the infants. It's an experience for me.
It's so important for the children, and then I think it also is because it's so important to the parents as well, that helps them to make this transition, back into the workforce, feeling like their child is cared for and safe, and that's a priceless feeling.
So it is a priceless feeling. Those were the good old days. That was me when a younger version. So shorter hair, a little older now, but still loving doing this because you heard Sandra. She's one of my favorites. You heard her, how important it is to her and how much she's grown as a human being. just from caring for babies. So again, what you do is an absolute honor and privilege if you have that, if you're able to do that, where you do get to care for another's most precious being on the earth. So let's go back and unpack that a little bit, because there was a lot of information there, but there's nothing quite as good as visuals. And as a former classroom teacher, when I saw those organized baskets with the baby's name, sometimes they can even be color coded. A lot of this is really management to make this easy for you if you're caring for at least more than one breastfed baby, so that you don't mix the milk up. But let's talk about storing breast milk. And the whole act of how it got out of the mother's breast and comes to your site, that's a whole nother topic, because there's a lot of energy and effort and logistics that go into that parent spending that time pumping, either at work or at home or at school. But ideally, what happens is that you communicate to the parent how that milk should arrive at your site. And so ideally, storing the milk in bottles, the ones that are safest, the glass one or the BPA-free ones, the plastic ones, so that there's not any plastics in the milk. That's going to be important. Or if the milk comes in the milk storage bags. Either way, when it comes to you, hopefully you will have instructed your parents to label the milk with their baby's name, the date that the milk was pumped, and even the time. And you saw in the video, Sandra was putting in that new milk that came. She put it into the refrigerator right away, and she put it at the end so that that older milk can be used first. So we kind of call, there's an acronym, first in, first out. But basically, we want to use the freshest milk possible. But if there's other milk that's older, we want to make sure we use that before we use the milk that's coming in. So the refrigerator, actually, it's changed. We in the video you heard, the refrigerator temperature needs to be 39 degrees. 40 degrees is adequate, but 40 degrees or lower for sure. And it can be stored in your refrigerator at your childcare site under these CAC-FP guidelines for 3 days or 72 hours. Now, just to remind you, we're sharing the absolute conservative best practices. Is that pumped milk still good after 72 hours? Yes. But to be on the most conservative best practice side, it's best to just have that policy of, we can keep your pumped milk that's been refrigerated for 72 hours. And then after that, communicate and find out what the mom wants to do, or the parent. Most of them will say, oh, I want to take it back home. Thank you. Last thing we want to do, because it's liquid gold, is throw it out, right? So 72 hours is the best practice for how long you can store that at your site. So think about that. That means toward the end of the week, you're basically going to be only keeping the milk that you're going to be using on Monday, and any other milk is going to be sent home with mom, because otherwise you won't be able to use it. You'll be sending it home later. Any questions about storing milk in the refrigerator? And this can be either bagged or bottled. Nope. Okay. Let's talk about storing milk that comes in frozen. So again, just like pumped milk that is coming into you, or she may be even pumped at your site, goes right into the refrigerator. Any frozen milk that the parent provides you is going to go directly into the freezer. And that temperature for the freezer should be 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and to keep it nice and cold. Breast milk for CAC-FP guidelines that you can keep in your freezer, the CAC-FP recommends 3 months. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be storing milk that long, but 3 months is the general rule of thumb. Now, at home, we know that lots of parents pump, and lots of parents are storing milk in their own freezer. And as long as that freezer is kept at the right temperature and it's near the back and it's not having a chance to thaw, breast milk can actually be kept up to 6 to 12 months in a home freezer. So think about this too, as you're receiving milk. If you're caring for more than one breastfed baby, you're going to want to have a system set up, right, in your refrigerator or your freezer so that you're not mixing milk up. So having those are like folder trays, those plastic trays that you can probably get at Lakeshore, or baskets that you can get at the dollar store. Be thinking of ways that you could label those baskets so that you can receive that milk either in the freezer or in the refrigerator in a nice, efficient, organized way. So any questions as far as storing breast milk, whether it's refrigerated or frozen? Nope. Okay. So now let's talk about it's time to feed the baby. And you've got milk in the refrigerator. How do you do it? Well, remember back in the video, the recommendation was to bring that milk either frozen or in a bottle in smaller quantities. So anywhere between 1 and 4 ounces. And the reason for this is because babies' tummies really can't hold much more than 4 ounces, especially a young baby, and even a younger baby, it's going to be much smaller. And the natural patterns of a breastfed baby are such that they prefer smaller quantities more often, which is why we look at the feeding patterns of breastfed babies and formula-fed babies, and they look different. Breastfed babies tend to take smaller quantities more frequently. So when it's time to feed that baby, hopefully you've got sort of what a typical feed is. And again, this is when communication is really important so that the parent's telling you, oh, well, it's usually, when my partner feeds her at home, she usually takes around 2.5, 3 ounces. So therefore, she's bringing you bottles with 3 ounces or frozen bags of milk that's about 3 ounces. The smaller the quantity too, the easier it is to, if the baby prefers to have that milk warm, like it comes out of the breast at 98.6 degrees body temperature. So some babies will want it just like it came out of the breast. Some babies won't care. They'll take it at room temperature or they'll take it chilled. So how do you know? Well, trial and error. It's going to be the way you know. But having a bottle warmer, that's a perk. Is it necessary? No. The best way to warm refrigerated milk is just under warm running water or in a bowl or a cup with warm water, and then just taking that bottle with milk, since don't actually have a bowl, and then just gently swirling it around. So remember, milk is a bioactive live fluid, and those cells are delicate, but they're not that delicate, but basically we don't need to shake the bottle of human milk like we do when we're mixing formula. So we can just be nice and gentle and swirl that as it warms up. And then it's also a good idea to just test that milk on your wrist just to make sure it's not too hot. It's not going to be too hot unless you're microwaving it or using a crock pot. And we know that these are both two things that we won't do when it comes to heating milk. Heat can destroy some of the components, but it has to be pretty hot. So you don't have to worry. All the components of the milk are going to be live and bioavailable to that baby. Any questions about heating up milk that's been refrigerated? How many of you have bottle warmers in your sites? You can do a reaction if you do. Okay. Let's talk about preparing frozen breast milk. So a question that a lot of people have, well, if you're freezing the milk, isn't that going to destroy some of the bioactive live cells? And the answer is yes, a small amount, but the majority are going to be bioactive and available to use. So the more debilitating thing to all those live cells in breast milk is going to be heat. But even so, when we look at donor breast milk at milk banks, that milk has been pasteurized, meaning it's been heated up and then cooled down, and still the majority of cells are going to withstand that heat. So we don't have to really worry too much about too cold or too hot. We just kind of want to keep it around body temperature. So ideally, well, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about why would a parent be bringing you frozen milk, or when would you need frozen milk? And that might be when you run out of refrigerated milk, and so you're tapping into the frozen milk supply. Or we all know babies go through growth spurts, right? Sometimes they are growing faster and they're eating more. And we share a lot about this in WIC so that families know when to expect those growth spurts, but they're typically going to be that first 7 to 10 days after birth. Again, it's 6 weeks, probably 6 weeks and longer is when the babies might be coming into your care. Again, at 3 months and 6 months. But babies can have little micro growth spurts anytime. So that's why it might be nice to have some frozen milk for when those situations arise, when the baby's showing you, I'm hungry and there's no refrigerated milk. Ideally, if you can take that packet of frozen milk out, if you know for whatever reason that you're probably going to need to use it the next day, it's best to thaw it overnight in the refrigerator so that by the time the next day comes, those crystals are gone and it's just nice cold milk, and then you can heat it up as if it were just refrigerated milk. However, if that baby is telling you, I need more milk, there's no refrigerated milk, then we go to the freezer stash. We take out that frozen bag that's hopefully in smaller quantities, like around 2 ounces at the most, 2.5. And what do? Same thing we do for refrigerated milk. We turn on the faucet, warm water, and we gradually, I don't have a bag with me, I should have brought one, use my phone. We just run that bag under the warm water, turn it around until those crystals have thawed, and then the milk is fluid and it is at whatever temperature we know that the baby prefers to have it. The last thing we want to do is heat that milk up quickly in a hot pot of water on the stove or in a microwave. So the thing to remember is we want to heat it, we want to thaw it gradually so we can preserve the integrity of all of those bioactive cells. Any questions about preparing that milk that's out of the fridge or out of the freezer? If I don't see any chat activity, I'm assuming you guys are good. I can keep moving on. Right. So let's talk about leftovers, right? Liquid gold. Last thing we want to do is toss it down the drain. So here's some important information that you need to know. It's different with breast milk than it is with formula. We know that once we prepare formula, we have a 60-minute window that we need to use that formula. And if the baby doesn't finish all of it, we have to throw it out. And that's because bacterial growth starts immediately once you prepare formula. Breast milk, though, because of its properties, actually has cells that eat bacteria. They're called macrophages. So breast milk is perfectly safe at room temperature, climate controlled, for about 4 hours. And so what does this mean when it comes to feeding the baby a bottle of human milk and the baby doesn't finish it all? Do we have to throw it away? And the answer is no. You can save the milk left over from that one feed for another 2 hours. And if the baby is showing signs of hunger within that 2-hour window, it's fine to give the baby the rest of that bottle of pumped human milk. It's also really important to have that conversation with the parent about leftovers, because what if it's more than 2 hours? Let's give the parent some agency in their milk and all of that effort that they took to pump the milk. So ask them, what would you like me to do with that milk that your baby didn't finish that's beyond the 2 hours? And most likely she'll say, oh, please just put it back in the refrigerator and I'll take it home. So that's what you can do with leftover milk. Last thing though you want to do is just toss it down the drain. Okay, moving along here. So I mentioned the feeding patterns of a breastfed baby are different from bottle-fed babies or formula-fed babies. It's really the difference between feeding directly at the breast, where the baby is coming on and is latching on and is in charge of how much and how long the baby stays on. And the milk flows from the breast in different waves. So when the baby first latches on the breast, stimulates, sucks fast, and then the milk starts to flow, and then the baby slows down and suck, 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 swallow, suck, 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 swallow. And then the milk flow over a period of time, minutes, it slows down again, and the baby gets a break. And then the baby starts to suckle fast again to initiate more milk flow. So the beautiful thing about when the baby's at the breast is they're in charge, and they decide when they're full based on all of the cues that their baby gets from what's in the milk, those hormones that tell the baby you're full, the fat content, you're full, and then they end the feed. But when we feed babies with the bottle, it's completely different. It's a continuous, fast flow. And so if we don't give the baby a break, what are they doing? They're like guzzle, guzzle, swallow, guzzle, guzzle, swallow. Their job is basically to avoid choking. So let's help them out and let's protect the breastfeeding relationship so that the feeding pace at the breast, we can sort of replicate that with the bottle. And I'm sure many of you are already doing this, but many of you may not be, or even in your families or with your friends. So when I'm feeding a baby, a breastfed baby, human milk, or if I'm feeding a formula-fed baby, formula, this is going to be the same for both. It's called respectful physiological feeding. So we're always going to be looking to our baby to tell us, am I giving the baby too much milk too fast in the bottle? Do I need to slow down? If your baby, they kind of stand up here, is laying down on their side and the bottle is at an angle, this is really challenging. Babies have to drink, 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 swallow, drink, 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 swallow, and try not to choke really fast. And they can take 4 ounces in 5-10 minutes. That's way too fast. That's not what the breastfed baby's used to. So this is a good practice for all babies, is to hold the baby more upright and tickle the baby's lip so that they open up and receive the bottle. So we're not just shoving it in. This is just respectful. We're honoring this baby, this human being. Let them open their mouth, draw the bottle in, and then we just hold it at an angle, almost horizontal. And then we watch the baby's brows and their face and their chin and their jaw to see, are they struggling to drink it too fast? And if so, let's tilt the bottle down and give them a little bit of a break. And then when they start to suckle more, we can tilt it back. So the whole idea is that we're following the baby's cues when it comes to feeding with the bottle. And just so you know, a typical breastfeed, it usually lasts between 15 to 20 minutes. Now, there's some biology that goes along with that. It takes the baby's brain and your brain and my brain about 20 minutes before we actually register fullness cues. So for this reason, we encourage you to try to make that feed last with whatever that amount is about 20 minutes so you can build in breaks. Another thing that happens with breastfeeding when the baby's feeding directly is they feed on one breast. When they decide they're done, mom usually offers the other breast. So this baby is getting turned around, and this is going to be impacting the baby's visual development because they're getting visual cues with different positions. So if you're feeding a baby, whether it's formula or it's breast milk, it's a good practice halfway between the feed. Oh, let's take a break. You can do a little burp if it's formula or breast milk, because sometimes they swallow some air. And then let's finish the feed with the second half of the bottle on the other side. All the while, what are we doing as caregivers? We're having this beautiful oxytocin exchange. We're looking at the baby. This is sensory development, and this is the bonding between you and your babies. So just a little bit about some of the things to think about when it comes to bottle feeding any baby, but especially the breastfed baby who's used to that different changes in position. Any comments or questions about that? A little bit more about feeding. So some parents, especially if they're formula feeding, their babies tend to be more on a predictable schedule. And this is because formula takes a certain amount of time to digest, whereas breast milk gets digested really, really quickly. So in your childcare site, you might be feeding the breastfed baby more frequently than the formula-fed baby or the combo-fed baby. But regardless, the best thing to do to decide when to feed the baby is when the baby's showing us hunger cues, right? So if the baby's scheduled, they probably start telling you, and then you know, oh, it's time to feed. But it's also important to know, and we teach this with new parents when they're getting to know their babies, how does your baby tell you that that she's hungry. And a lot of new parents will say, oh, well, she cries. And it's like, oh, yes, she does cry. Did you notice other things that she did before she cried? And it's like, oh, well, she just sort of smacking her lips around and sticking her tongue out. And breastfed babies are trying to use their cheeks to find the breast. They're rooting because that's just their navigation system are their cheeks. So if you can notice this at your home or your center, these early feeding cues, that gives you time to get the milk ready. And you're going to be feeding a baby who's not hangry, not hungry and angry, but who's now showing you sort of those mid feeding cues where they're starting to get a little bit more wiggly. They're trying to get their hands in their mouth. And then, sometimes life gets busy. We've got other babies, children to care for. And so the crying comes. Well, don't beat yourself up for that, but just pay more attention so that you can catch those early feeding cues and get that feed ready for the baby. Now, fullness cues at the breast, they usually come as the baby is getting those signals to the brain that, oh, I am full. And so they slow down at the breast, they fall asleep. Sometimes they pop off the breast. With the bottle, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to be looking for signs where the baby is not suckling so much or just kind of keeping the nipple in their mouth, but really not doing anything else. Or maybe they fall asleep, or maybe they just pop off the bottle. So these are the same things that you're going to be looking for, whether it's the breastfeeding parent looking for hunger and fullness cues, or it's a childcare provider looking for hunger or fullness cues. When babies are full, they're no longer tense. Their fists are not clenched. They're not trying to get their hands and limbs to the midline. They're very relaxed. Anything else you guys notice about hunger or fullness cues? All right, let's watch another video that's going to go over a lot about what I've just shared with you.
Now that we know how to properly store, handle, and prepare breast milk, let's talk about how to feed the baby. In this video, we'll discuss paced bottle feeding, which is a great technique for both breastfed and formula-fed babies. All babies have feeding patterns. Formula-fed babies may be more predictable since many moms report their babies eat every 3 to 4 hours. Feeding patterns of breastfed babies may look different because the breastfeeding relationship between mom and baby is not only about eating at the breast, but also about finding comfort at the breast.
Breastfeeding and bottle feeding are different in the speed that the milk comes out and the pattern. So with breastfeeding, it's sort of an ebb and flow, and with bottle feeding, it's a continuous flow. So it's helpful to sort of slow down the bottle feeding to mimic the breast.
All babies show hunger cues.
Una de las grandes recomendaciones es precisamente observar siempre al bebé para darnos cuenta que el bebé necesita comer o que está mostrando señales de que tiene hambre, o las ocasiones principalmente es que empieza a moverse mucho, empieza a poner sus dedos dentro de su boquita, y el último es llorar.
Early cues for young infants may include stirring, mouth opening, turning their head, seeking, or rooting. Mid cues for young infants may include stretching, increasing movement, putting their hands in their mouth, making sucking noises, or puckering lips.
Empiezan la mano o ya no están conformes, ya no quieren jugar con nada, ya nomás quieren estarse chupando, metiéndose a la boca todo lo que ellos miran. Entonces eso me está diciendo que él ya tiene hambre, ¿verdad?
The wonderful thing about breastfeeding is that babies are in charge of how much they take, and they set the pace. And when they're full, they stop feeding. So with bottle feeding, it's important if we can try to mimic the breastfeeding experience and really look at the baby and let the baby decide when they're full.
Pace the bottle feeding to mimic breastfeeding, which usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Like adults, babies need to eat slowly and give their bodies time to feel fullness cues.
Autorregulación es una de las maneras o de las definiciones que se dicen cuando estamos dando pecho, y que el baby tiende a controlar cuál es la cantidad de alimento, en este caso de leche materna, que él necesita.
Whenever possible, the same caregiver should feed the baby so that the two get to know each other. Eye contact is important and is soothing for both the baby and caregiver. It's a mutual oxytocin rush. Breast milk has specific components that help the baby's visual system mature. Switching sides halfway during the feed, whether the baby takes formula or breast milk, helps the baby's visual centers in the brain develop. To practice paced bottle feeding, always hold baby and the bottle when feeding. Hold the baby almost upright. Brush the bottle nipple across baby's upper lip. Wait for baby to open their mouth. Hold the bottle in an almost flat position. The nipple will only be partially full. This helps keep the milk from pouring into the baby's mouth. Let baby pause and take breaks every few sucks by tilting the bottle down. Strive to make the feed last 15 to 20 minutes. It's helpful to start by noticing how long it currently takes to feed baby. Strive to extend each feed just a few minutes longer.
Una de las señales o varias de las señales cuando un bebé ya está lleno normalmente es que deja de comer, a veces empuja un poquito hacia atrás y hay que estar pendientes de esas señales para no sobrealimentar a un bebé.
Fullness cues may include relaxed body, slow suck, milk drunk, or glazed look, or falls asleep. Some babies may even turn away or push the bottle away when they're full.
Comunicándome con la mamá, ¿a qué horas fue de darle, cuando llegó le dio de comer? Entonces yo me baso en su reloj biológico del niño, dependiendo de cuando él me pide. Entonces yo ya tengo todo preparado, lo tengo almacenado y todo, cuál es la leche que voy a usar primero y cuál es la leche que se va a ir usando después. Entonces ya el niño me va a ir avisando por su reloj biológico, es diferente que la fórmula. Entonces el niño, la fórmula es cada 3 horas, el niño, la leche materna no, la leche materna él me va a avisar cuando él tenga hambre. Entonces yo tengo que estar cuidado en sus estados que él me diga, él me lo va a avisar. Yo tengo que estar poniendo atención de si ya está llorando porque está sucio o algo, o si es porque tiene hambre. Entonces ya hago eso de darle de comer.
Parents will provide what she estimates baby will take at a feed. If baby is still showing hunger cues after a bottle, offer another ounce slowly until baby is satisfied. Try to avoid leftovers. Your infant feeding plan should have a space where you can document if and when mom plans to breastfeed on site. You should also discuss with parents what they want you to do if baby appears hungry before they arrive.
Muchas veces el cuidador de niños puede tener un papel muy importante y puede ayudar a la mamá si ya está pronto a llegar a recogerlo y podemos ver que el bebé tiene hambre. Muchas veces podemos tratar de cargarlo o tratar de, si le tenemos que ofrecer un poco, que sea algo, pero no la toma completa, porque si no ya va a llegar la mamá y no va a poder comer.
To help childcare providers get ready to bottle feed a breastfed baby, it's really helpful if mom practices at home with somebody else who can practice giving the baby a bottle, just an ounce or two, doesn't have to be a full feed, so that the baby is learning a new skill to bottle feed.
Some babies may resist taking expressed breast milk in a bottle, but babies can also take milk from a cup or a spoon.
Reverse cycle feeding happens when babies don't consume as much milk during the day at childcare that they might if they were with mom breastfeeding. So what happens is when mom and baby are reunited at the end of the day, baby makes up for that volume of breast milk that he didn't take during the day. Babies really don't care when they get it. It's as long as they get that important amount in a 24-hour period. So doing a lot of breastfeeding when mom is home with baby and on the weekends and breastfeeding throughout the night is a way she can protect her milk supply. And childcare providers don't have to worry about not giving the baby enough. So the best way for a mom to maintain her supply at work is to try to pump as often as she would breastfeed if she was with her baby. So that's kind of hard, but if she can get at least 2, maybe 3 pump sessions in if she's working a typical 8-hour day, and then most importantly is when she's with her baby, let her baby breastfeed as much because that's going to protect her supply.
In general, breastfed babies may take less breast milk at a feed and feed more often than formula-fed babies. So don't compare quantities.
Que cada bebé es un individuo, es una persona diferente. Muchas veces pueden ser que los babies quieren alimentarse más seguido, otros bebés comen un poquito más y tienden a hacer sus frecuencias de alimentación un poquito más espaciadas. Entonces, más que todo hay que observar cuando un baby tiene hambre y en base a eso podemos alimentar al bebé.
So newborns need to breastfeed a lot right from birth. And as the baby gets older, could be less, could be the same, could be more, but generally they breastfeed less as they get older.
On the other hand, mom needs to offer more formula as baby grows. Infant feeding is a personal choice. Though breast milk is optimal, it is not the only option. Any breastfeeding is beneficial. Your support means the world to moms.
Hey, so lots of good information in there. Most childcare providers, after we do this training, find that learning about paced bottle feeding is really a helpful technique that they will be more mindful of and try. So I don't know if that's the case for you, but it's just a very nice way to feed all babies with a bottle. So just a couple more things. We're almost done here, but just a few things that were mentioned in the video that I just kind of want to remind you about. When we think about that parent who's going back to work or school and you're taking care of her most precious thing in her life, there's a lot involved with pumping. And so anytime that baby breastfeeds, that's one less pump session. So what I mean to say is that when she's coming to drop off her baby, if she's the one, the breastfeeding parent there, it's great if she can sit down and just top off or breastfeed the baby before she gets in the car to go. That means that she's not going to have to pump as much at work. So ideally, she would pump at her morning, mid-morning break, again at lunch, and then in the middle of the afternoon. And then you guys are aware of what time she's supposed to get to your childcare site, so that if the baby's showing hunger cues really close to the time she's supposed to arrive, if you can, just offer a very minimum or distract the baby so that right when she gets there, she can breastfeed, because her breasts are going to be ready for that feed. So those drop off and pick up feeds are really important. That means one less pump session. And the last thing we want to do is put more pressure on moms and say, you know what, you're not giving me enough milk. I need more milk. There's nothing more to decrease milk supply than stress because the milk isn't going to flow as much. So let's remember, we can encourage mom, hey, if your supply is dipping, it's okay. Bring what you have, and then you let me know what you want me to do. If we want to supplement with formula. Or you can encourage her and remind her, you know what, your baby's taking 10 ounces in this 8-hour period or 10-hour period that you're at work. Most breastfed babies need around 25 ounces in a 24-hour period from 6 weeks to 6 months. So the baby can make up when the baby's with the mom. So the last thing we want to do is most working moms, they're tired, right? They want to cut the nighttime feeds. But guess what? That nighttime feed is really protective, because that's a time when the baby's getting more calories, more milk, and that means she's going to have to do less pumping later on. So really encouraging her to breastfeed as often and as much as the baby wants when she's home with her baby in the evenings, nighttime feeds, and then definitely on the weekends. All right, you guys. Here's just a quick summary. Any amount of breastfeeding or breast milk is beneficial for so many reasons, for SIDS and for tons of other reasons. There are really easy ways to support breastfeeding families by being a breastfeeding-friendly childcare provider. Your support can make or break it for a young family who's dealing with being new parents and going back to work. There's lots of resources available to you. I want to show you that next. And so I just thank you for supporting breastfeeding families. And I forgot to introduce my co-presenter usually is Kim Elkins. She's from American Red Cross, but it was just me today. But here's our contact information. And I do believe I can send a PDF of the slide deck so that Jackie can share that with you guys. Wanted to show you something really important, because this is part of the building blocks for these resources. So these will also be on the slide deck, but WIC has incredible educational materials. So if you don't have anything about breastfeeding, go to myfamily.wic.ca.gov, and I want to show you what's there. Are you seeing the CDPH WIC site? Okay, cool. So this takes you directly to the breastfeeding page. If you choose any one of these, you're going to have access to all of our WIC materials, but I do want to show you this one, like learn the basics of breastfeeding. Okay, let's learn more about breastfeeding. Here you have PDF digital copies of some really great supplies or resources. This guide to breastfeeding is wonderful. It goes over pretty much everything. This is what we share during our WIC appointments. Talks about everything from why to choose breastfeeding, how your body makes milk. I mean, it's 31 pages. I'm not going to make you dizzy right now, but I want you to know that that is definitely a resource that you have. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, resources. Okay, are you seeing the resources page again? Awesome. Okay, here's the CACFP link. This is incredible, especially if you're a center and you follow their guidelines. There is a digital booklet, but I'm going to go down and just open up chapter 2, which is all about feeding the breastfed baby. And here, if you didn't take notes because I told you to kick up back and relax, but if you want to have this information again in written form, it's all in this booklet. And chapter 2 specifically focuses on feeding the breastfed baby, and we'll cover a lot of the material that I shared with you earlier. Okay, let me go back to my resources page. I mentioned that about a little less than 10 years ago, this was a 3-5-year grant where we produced all of these materials, the videos that you saw. You can visit the Center for Community Health, this website, and it's going to give you so much. Videos about what is breastfeeding-friendly childcare, the building blocks. It goes over each of the building blocks, and it gives you resources. So for instance, let's look really quickly, creating a breastfeeding-friendly environment. That's another one I want to show you. Policies. Okay, so remember we're talking about you don't have to have a complicated policy, but if we go to this resource, it's going to give you both in Spanish and English a template. So you could look at this and decide, oh, do I want to adapt this and use this for my home if you're an in-home provider, or do we want to look at this as a center and put this into our website and into our parent handbook? So lots of really good resources. And I'm going to stop sharing because that's all that I have. And there's time for questions and I think time